Having done sales training for many, many years and helping people in sales and working with people who don't necessarily see themselves as salespeople. Originally, my first experience of doing this was in a retail business where I'm teaching dive instructors how to sell, and they didn't think that they needed to sell and they didn't know how they could sell. And fact of the matter is, in that scenario, you automatically create a space of authority. All right. This person's trusting your life to take them under the water. So you have an ability where you've got a level of authority there, which can be done obviously ethically in a way where you can empower people to make the right decisions of what they're doing. And often what happens at situations where people would really lack the level of confidence because of a fear of the no, fear of what people would think about them. At that point, we talk about asking for the sale. The technical term for this in sales is the close, going for the close. And people can do all the great things, build a great relationship, all that sort of stuff up, but they won't actually ask for the sale. And that generally comes back down to a lack of confidence in being and knowing how to do it. And it comes back down to what are they going to fear of that rejection, and not being able to handle the objections. Or better still, they actually go through the process of building up the confidence, generally because they feel that they have to. So there is a strong motivation away from doing this sale. And that would be the case of business owners and coaches and things like that, where they know they have to make this sale. So they're forced beyond the comfort zone to do it. But then they get that rejection and they go, oh, so what do you think about that? No, I'll do it later. Oh, okay, bye. And they're so happy they got that objection to get out of there that they don't have the confidence to go, well, I've done this great conversation. I've had this fantastic conversation with you, and I know my product or service is going to work well here. How is it possible you did not have that? And all of a sudden, it all goes pear-shaped from there. So overcoming those objections is needing a confidence. It's about knowing where you need to go. And sometimes we're so far short in our thinking of where we are going, we can't see any further than just the very next step. And we get to that step, we go, okay, so now we're here. What's the next thing we do? So it's really important to have an understanding of where is the final step. And Shondell, you've had some great experience in explaining this to people, and it's something that you've used yourself personally, and we've seen it make a big difference where people need to go beyond the next step. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, one of the most important things about closing that I want to mention for everybody is that a close doesn't always just happen at the end of a sale. I think if you know your sales steps, if you know that you have a system, and usually there's an engagement process, often we refer to Seth Godin's coffee to marriage principle. You don't meet someone in a bar and propose marriage on the first date. Usually there's a series of, relationship steps and, a certain amount of courtship and interactions and things like that. And so sometimes if people don't have their sales steps set out really well, it can be a little bit like proposing marriage on the first date. And so when you know your sales steps, the close is actually, closing into the next action. So let's say, for example, you get an inquiry or an inbound lead. The first step is to close the first conversation. The next step might be to close, the appointment, and the next action to put together a proposal, et cetera, et cetera. But I think what you might have been referring to was my ability to jump the worry wall. And there's a little bit of background to this really, really quickly, is that my grandmother used to have this saying where she'd say, anytime I was going in to do something important, she'd say, make sure you walk in with the right foot. And it was really interesting because I found myself sometimes literally crossing the threshold of a doorway with my right foot because it changed a perception in my mindset. And then I started to apply this to things that I had a little bit of itty bitty shitty committee on. So my first career in sales, in business to business sales, was actually, I was required to make 150 cold calls a day to get 10 appointments the following day. And so, it takes grit, it takes resilience. There's lots of knockbacks, people hanging up the phone, potentially swearing at you, yelling at you, calling you names, etc. And so often I would find that if I'd had 4 or 5 or 6 calls where I'd received, hang-ups or people being rude to me on the phone, I would feel like I needed to reset a little bit. And so I had this process where I would imagine past the successful completion of the thing that I was doing. And so my strategy was that as I dialed the number to call somebody, I would imagine myself hanging up the phone, having a successful phone call and putting the appointment into my calendar. And that helped me to have the confidence to be in a better position to actually make the phone call. And I think that there are lots of things that that impact our confidence when it comes to the sales process and the ability to handle rejection or objections, as often people will associate the two as being the same. I think it's also important to think about our body language and how we are setting ourselves up for success as well.